Hello and welcome back to Rev Endurance Sports and a new product introduction. Now I've known about this frame for a little bit, but dealers and writers, magazines, and YouTube content creators, they are usually made aware of something and then they're under an embargo until a certain time. If you're not hip to it, there is a bike show slash bike races slash festival being held this weekend, so today's the 18th, so I believe it starts today, Thursday, 18th, 19th, 20th. And so there's Grand Fondos, gravel rides, road races, all that stuff. But what it has become over the last few years is a bike show to replace, and they may not like this, but to replace what was the perennial bike show held in Las Vegas, and that was called Interbike, kind of like Eurobike. And that went away, who knows why. Then there was another, or there is another traveling show, like Cabda, I think. And so they do like East or Midwest, and then one out here on the West Coast. But pretty much Sea Otter's now become the primary place where manufacturers will display their new product. All right. So what we're going to talk about today is the Richie Montabello. And so what's going on is there is a gap between their cyclocross bikes and their road bikes. So this image right here is just to show you how small the US-based team is of Ritchey. This is Fergus, or the Fur Dog. If you know, you know. This is, I believe, Bailey. I read this. Yeah, Bailey, who's only been with the company a few months. Fergus has been with the company, I think, 10 years, something like that. As I said, I read this earlier. I'm not going to read it to you now. You can pause and read. And then this is Simon, the internal. Some of you might have already spoken to him via email. But this is the new bike. Now, what I meant by there are gaps, what's happening is tire sizes are getting, or acceptable tire sizes are getting bigger and bigger and bigger for road riding. And then, of course, for randonneuring, which is what this bike is going to fall under, that model or that discipline. And then, of course, gravel bikes, they started with just a little bit more tire clearance than a cyclocross bike, which, was the legal amount was like 33 millimeters. Then you had 35 millimeters, and then so on and so on and so on and so on. So funny thing, I just got a text message from a gentleman named Barry. Have I seen the new Ritchey? And I'm in the process of shooting the video. Anyway, so with the cyclocross bikes, that was kind of regulated by the cyclocross organizations. So when bikes were made for the public, it fell under that. So for the longest time, people were like, well, what's so different about a gravel bike compared to a cyclocross bike? Well, it came down to disc brakes for a little bit until cyclocross accepted it, and then tire size. So now my Outback accepts a 48 mil 700 and the a 2.0 650, something like that. And but you've got the Road Logic bike, which several people have asked me on several occasions, what do I think the Road Logic disc bike will fit? And so for the longest time, I didn't really have an opinion because I don't actually own one. So I've not been able to experiment with my own bike, wheels, and tires. Well, this bike is being promoted to hold 36 with fenders as you see it, and then a 40 without fenders. So here's the text here, 36, and then 40 without. And to put things in perspective, The road disc model is only, to keep themselves safe. It's published as 30 millimeters. I have seen Fergus make comments here and there on Instagram and several other places that 32 will fit. But like I said, I've had people ask me and I've not been able to confirm that. I can put 32s in my red Sally macaroon, so the burgundy with the pink logos. I can put 32s, but the limiting factor is the rim brake caliper. So on the disc brake, they're talking 30 on the spec sheet, but possibly 32s, just depending on rim and tire combination. This bike solves that problem altogether. Now we have a 36 millimeter tire clearance with fenders, mudguards in Europe, and a 40, which is what the cyclocross bike has. The Swiss Cross has a 40 millimeter tire clearance. So you're going to go, so this bike, as I mentioned, splits that difference between the 30 millimeter acceptable on the road disc to a 36 with fenders up to 40 mil without fenders in a road geometry. One caveat, I've not seen the geometry chart yet, but they say it has a little bit more stack. So it makes sense if it's a randonneuring bike that you'll have a little bit taller head tube. I have seen many posts here and there that the road logic geometry doesn't work for people. I understand, but you have to consider that the road logic is predominantly a race bike. It's ridden by endurance people, but it's race bike geometry. The 55 that I ride has a 160 head tube, which is actually fairly tall for a 55, but it then has, I think it's like a 590 reach. And so I may not be perfect on those numbers, and that's not the important part anyway. But what is important is that some people, I saw somebody's comment, the most ill-fitting bike I've ever had. And I'm like, well, you saw the geometry chart before you purchased the bike. So that's on you, not on Richie's geometry. I ride the Road Logic 55. A lot of people have asked me for sizing recommendations. I'm just going to tell you what I do. I am 5'9" with long legs and a short torso. I ride a 55. My saddle is somewhat centered with a setback seat post, and I ride a 120 stem. Now, if this is going to have a longer, a taller head tube, then maybe some considerations will be made. Now, as I mentioned, my concern is it going to be too tall? Because I just don't like a lot of head tube. I'd rather work with my headset spacers, have a little bit shorter head tube, but then work the height on head tube spacers and stem. Carbon manufacturers for many years, that's basically what they've done, is they've taken the headset spacers and all this stuff, and they've just filled this all in with carbon head tube, right? Just to make their bikes look prettier and say, look, we have a taller head tube, a taller stack. Anyway, oh, I'm sorry, yeah, I think the stack is 5 something, but the reach is like 390. It just came to me on the 55. So let me know what you think about this bike. It is disc brake, obviously. It's got this new fork, so you can put your front rack on there and you can put your headlight. And it has a a designated port to run your lighting for your dynamo. And for some people, they love a dynamo. Some people like standalone lights. It's got the new...
10 o'clock.
It's 10 o'clock. They've got the new dropouts on this bike now that you have been seeing them on the Outback. And it's just a really beautiful red paint scheme. So I want to hear what you folks think about it. Did we solve a problem that needed a solution? Did we find now the bike that we can put whatever tire size we want, still ride road, maybe get out and do some dirt as well, and now we have functionality. So we have a fork that on the Road Logic disc or rim does not have a fork with some additional functionality for endurance riding. So I'd like to hear your opinions. I'd like to know if anyone's interested in one. I can probably start putting a back order in. I'm guessing the ETAs are after the summer time frame. This is April the 18th of 2024. Anyway, let me hear your thoughts. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you up the road.